roll call?
I think so.
Okay, let's go ahead and take roll call.
Mr. Hilsinger,
Here.
Mr. Ballard,
Here.
Mr. Cunningham,
Here.
Mr. Elliott,
Here.
Mr. Lawler, Mr. Lawler, can you hear us? I see that he's here, but I don't
Yeah, I saw it.
hear him. And that's 5.
With Steve.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Taylor will join later, and then we'll have 6 for the executive meeting.
Well, exactly. So, okay. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you then. And we have the one item?
Yes. So, Stephen, did you have a PowerPoint or something you wanted to put up?
I have a PDF that I
Okay.
want. But then I think Angela, before I kind of get into our presentation, Angela was going to give a little bit of introduction and kind of a little bit of background on the
Okay.
I do have a little a PDF, if you don't mind to allow me to share. Just it's just a few slides before Stephen begins.
Okay, I'm making you the presenter now. You should be able to
share
and then click the PDF.
Okay. Let me make sure that I've not done this on WebEx before, so 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. It's not, I don't see.
The share button is down by the mute button.
Yeah, but I'm looking for, oh, here it is. I'm sorry, for the PDF. I was actually looking for the actual.
Okay, it's coming up.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so, I'll just make this really quick. My name is Angela Pinex, and I am the executive director for the Spanish Lake CDC. And I just want to first thank the commission for allowing Stephen and I to present to you the Spanish Lake Town Center plan. And my job first is to just give a little background on the CDC and kind of how we got to this stage that we're at now. First of all, I know you guys are familiar with Spanish Lake and the boundaries, but just wanted to show it again. We actually go all the way out to the rivers, where this up here is of course, the Missouri River and the Mississippi River, and where they actually meet. So we actually cover that portion of that portion is Spanish Lake as well. Spanish Lake destination places, if you weren't real familiar, is the federal building, the National Archives, Fort Bellefontaine, which is the first military installation west of the Mississippi, the confluence, what I just talked about, where the Mississippi and Missouri rivers meet. And then also there are other Spanish Lake destination places. We are very excited about the world-renowned St. Louis Zoo being our neighbor at the Wild Care Park in Spanish Lake, which is planning to open in 2026. And I'm sure you guys have had many conversations with the group there at the zoo. Also, Columbia Bottoms Conservation Area, where the sunflower fields, we're very proud of that. And then also migrating birds stop through Spanish Lake. It's important that I mention those things because we've had many plans and not plans, but studies and assessments. And in each of those, what typically comes out of that is Spanish Lake does not have, it lacks a sense of place. The youth needs assessment said limited community cohesion. Currently, Spanish Lake has no places residents can identify as a part of the community. So when we have all of those beautiful things in Spanish Lake, it's a little hard for us to believe that people are still saying those things about the area, and certain things actually drive the narrative. But as you can see here, the things that we actually have, and we'd like to become a place of destination. And that's what is bringing us to this particular project. We came before you in 2019 to approve the 2015 Bell Fountain Corridor Study. And thank you again for approving that, So that allowed us to, we received funding from the Port Authority to implement that study. In that particular study, identified two commercial corridors: the South Node, which is at I-270 and Bell Fountain, and then also the North Node. The South Node is heavily retail, commercial, and of course, that town center, that North Node space. We wanted to actually remedy that thought of there's no sense of place, there's nowhere to gather. Where is Spanish Lake? What is Spanish Lake? So this town center, which you'll hear a little bit from Stephen in just a few minutes, is supposed to remedy that. So we're very, very proud of this particular plan that we've been able to put together. We started the actual community engagement in May. And May and June was mostly community engagement. We were able to develop some options for the community for which they chose how to guide us through the development process. And Stephen will talk to you about that. And I think that is the end of what I'd like to say, but we're coming before you to look at this plan and allow us, or to include that into the county's general land use plan. And of course, any questions, if you have any questions, then we can answer those questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And I'll move forward in terms of kind of giving the commission an overview of the actual plan. Let me share my screen. And as I share my screen, a little bit of background in terms of who I am. My name is Stephen Ivandahl, the principal of the I5 group. So we're a community planning consulting firm. And so we were retained by the Spanish Lake Community Development Corporation earlier in the year to assist them with developing the master land use master plan. So I'll just kind of walk you through kind of the overall plan, and I'll kind of walk you through kind of the process we went through to kind of get through the plan, and leave some time at the end for questions and discussion. As Angela mentioned, it was really great to work with the community in terms of there was this great desire from the community in terms of really creating a sense of place, creating kind of a town center. And as Angela mentioned, it really kind of came, the seeds of it were planted back in the economic study was done. It was, I guess, formally adopted in 2019, but started back in 2015. And really concentrating on, the South Node and North Node as areas of opportunity in Spanish Lake. So this plan focused on the North Node, and it kind of quickly became kind of rebranded as the town center, because I think the community really saw it as an opportunity to come together and really kind of create a heart of a Spanish Lake. And as you see on this slide, really there are kind of three main steps to the overall process. One, of a really in-depth listening process to the community. Two, kind of working with them in terms of creating that land use vision. And then 3, especially working with the steering committee that was developed and the CDC in terms of then the steps moving forward to implementing the vision. And we'll kind of walk you through the process. So again, as Angela mentioned, everyone knows where Spanish Lake is, but to give you a little bit more context in terms of the actual study area, it was about 70 acres. You can see there in yellow at Parker Road and Bellefontaine Road at that intersection. So just east of 367 a little bit, a little bit north of 270. But then we're just a little bit to the southwest of Spanish Lake Park, and as Angela mentioned, the future Wildcare Park, which I think could open as soon as 2026. So you kind of see the general location there, and a little bit more of a detailed location in terms of again kind of this area around Parker Road and Pattern Drive. If you're familiar with Bell Park Plaza, is really kind of the heart of the study area, about 70 acres in total. And this map kind of shows kind of the history of that area. Again, Bell Park Plaza, I think a little bit over 50 years old. You kind of see there in terms of some aerial maps, kind of in the bottom right, 1955. You start to see some housing, and then by 1966, you see a little grainy photograph. But you see Bell Park Plaza, the kind of the main buildings around that being built, and then by the early 80s, Pattern Drive was built, and you start to kind of see kind of how it is today. So a lot of the buildings there, a lot of the properties there are dated. Some disinvestment in that area. So again, a chance to kind of look at a new vision for this area moving forward. And as Angela mentioned, the engagement process started back in the spring. There was another separate kind of engagement consultant specifically for this these early listening sessions back in May and June. So 2 community workshops were held, and with COVID, these were held outside in Spanish Lake Park. Over 20 pop-up events in terms of at Bell Park Plaza and different areas in the city area, just kind of meeting residents, and then informing them of a survey that was going on concurrently to get their input for this area. And then concurrently, as this was going on, our consultant team, we put together kind of an updated market analysis. There was a market analysis done back in the 2015-2019 study, but part of our work was updating that. And unfortunately, there was a lot of overlap between what was being heard from the residents and what we found was reasonable from a market perspective. So things like Angela mentioned in terms of not only kind of a community gathering area, kind of a sense of place, but things like on a commercial side, in terms of the desire for more retail, the desire for more restaurants. And so our market analysis found those were feasible and practical. But also kind of a need and desire for some additional community services in terms of supporting local businesses, maybe an entrepreneur center. Angela mentioned Wildcare Park. Is there some opportunities maybe to have back office or administrative space of that? So all that kind of, again, I think what we heard from the residents really a lot of overlap with feasibility from a market perspective. So after that initial listening sessions in the spring, we worked on developing 3 conceptual land use options that we wanted then to kind of come back to the public with, and before we went too far along in the process. And you see there on the right, a little small, but one in terms of what we call kind of stay the course, that because this area is privately owned parcels. We looked at wanted to just kind of stay the course, and maybe some minor site improvements. There are a couple of vacant parcels, but basically kind of stay the course versus at the other end of the spectrum, what we call scenario 3, holistic redevelopment, kind of a more complete reimagining of this whole area. They're looking long term, and then scenario 2 is kind of a middle ground of that. And we presented those options at a interactive community workshop back in July. Very enthusiastic attendance. And what we heard from the residents of that interactive workshop in July, you kind of see there on the photo, kind of dot voting in terms of their preferred scenario. There was really a strong preference from the community in terms of really going for the holistic redevelopment with the understanding, and this is kind of the more detailed in terms of that scenario 3 in terms of some of the benefits and considerations, with the understanding that there would be some some potential drawbacks in terms of this would be a longer term approach, because it's all privately owned. You have to kind of be patient in terms of either using land use policy, zoning, et cetera, to make changes, or perhaps finding some money to do maybe some targeted acquisition. So knowing that this would be a longer term vision, there's a lot of again support in terms of looking at this scenario 3, holistic redevelopment. And then also at the interactive workshop, we also then did a visual preference survey, because again we heard a lot in the listening sessions about kind of what folks wanted to see. So we wanted to confirm with them through visuals in terms of making sure that when folks said they wanted a certain look of development, that we were on the same page in terms of what does that actually look like. So again, an example, I won't show all the kind of the different results, but just kind of an example of one of the things we did in terms of the look of retail and commercial, in terms of the aesthetics of future development and what it might look like. And again, some clear preferences from the community in terms of making sure that any future development or redevelopment is high quality architecture, really thoughtful in this design. So again, a lot of I think clear preferences in the community along those lines. So we took that information from the July workshop and then moved forward into the draft land use master plan, and really kind of 4 main components of that final land use master plan. One was a future land use plan, an illustrative plan, and I'll kind of walk you through each of these, a conceptual streetscape design, and then a tactile urbanism, which if you're not familiar with that term, it's kind of looking at kind of maybe more shorter term, lower cost improvements. Sometimes they're a way to test out some improvements that could be done in the longer term. And I'll kind of walk you through each of these. And again, just kind of existing conditions. You kind of see here this kind of more illustrative existing conditions. That the brown are existing buildings, the grays are parking lots or streets. The light green is lawn or grass areas, and the darker green are trees. These are basically the existing conditions of this area. This first map I'll show you is the future land use plan. So as we look toward future uses, future land use plan kind of sets that stage in terms of what should be appropriate in these areas moving forward, and it's also a guide in terms of making future zoning decisions in this area. So you kind of see the lighter kind of the paint color around Pattern and Bellefontaine Road is proposed to be mixed use moving forward. So perhaps a combination of retail, probably predominantly retail, maybe some office, and even maybe some kind of unique residential that we'll talk about a little more in more detail. Kind of the bluish gray around Pattern, more of a community services focused area. And we have some details kind of we'll show this. The light purple neighborhood commercial as you kind of get closer to some of the existing residential areas, and then as kind of the transition areas, residential areas. So for each of these areas, and I won't get into the detail of these are kind of in the final plan, but there's some general descriptions of characteristics of each of these land use areas. Again, as perhaps there's potential updates to the zoning, or if there's kind of these zoning requests or development requests for this area, these descriptions can help both the Community Development Corporation, the Planning Commission, and the county make decisions regarding future development in this area. Kind of the second component of the land use master plan was an illustrative master plan in terms of looking at how development might actually look on the site. And again, in some ways, this is a little bit more of a marketing tool for the Community Development Corporation moving forward in terms of as they talk with prospective developers, et cetera. This kind of gives a little bit more kind of a, what's the potential in terms of doing something here, and also kind of showing, again, kind of the overall development vision. Again, all these are existing, privately owned parcels. So again, kind of the final look at development, obviously, may be, somewhat different, but again, it kind of shows kind of the vision of the community for this area. I'll kind of walk you through each of these areas. This first one, again, kind of potential kind of phasing of these, and we were conscious in terms of making sure that we did pay attention in terms of existing parcels, parcel lines, with the idea that maybe if one parcel moved forward, how could an adjacent parcel, nearby parcel, be developed that would be complementary to the overall vision. So I'll kind of walk you through these different areas. So this first one is to the east of Bellefontaine Road, just kind of at the intersection, the southeast intersection of Lakeside Lane. To the south here, to the south is a vacant lot. To the north, on the north side, is a existing retail development. So the vision here was new retail and dining in this location. This is an existing bird's eye view of existing conditions. You kind of see the vacant lot there on the east side of Bellefontaine Road. This is kind of a vision sketch of what, again, the kind of the vision from the community in terms of retail, dining in this location, having the buildings closer to the street, with parking in the rear. So that way, kind of creates that sense of place. It has the opportunity for outdoor seating, etc. This sketch also shows the idea of having streetscape improvements along Bellefontaine Road in terms of street trees, lighting. Lighting was a high priority for the community, not only especially from a safety side, in terms of just having better lighting in this area, but then if it's also kind of ornamental, again, it kind of adds to the potential for economic development in this area. Kind of moving south a little bit along Bellefontaine Road. This is the area that can be kind of called the kind of community services area and town square. There's an existing underutilized kind of green space on this development that could be utilized in this area. But some of the buildings you see here would be, again, a potential for a community center. It could maybe be anchored by a kind of a convenient care health clinic. The idea maybe for an entrepreneurial incubator space in this area. Also kind of potential for the back office nonprofit space here in this area. Again, this is an existing bird's eye view, kind of looking back toward Bellefontaine, kind of along the top of your screen. But again, you kind of see some of the vacant green space here, kind of this vacant kind of round-shaped building, kind of in the foreground of your picture. And again, kind of the vision sketch in terms of the community vision for this area. Again, kind of a mix of community related buildings, but also kind of taking advantage of the green spaces that is here. That if you're familiar with 9 Mile Garden in Afton off of Gravois Road, it's kind of part of maybe the potential precedent here in terms of even though this could still be private retail space, in terms of having some community space here that kind of both serves as an amenity for the development. And then kind of another slight variation off that in terms of having either potential phasing or some additional green space in this area with this kind of alternative sketch. To the north, this is where Bell Park Plaza is. And again, kind of the longer term vision here, perhaps as it becomes then more of a mixed use focus with retail and office along Bellefontaine Road and back off the road, the potential maybe for some unique residential, maybe that's again unique to Spanish Lake. And then to the south, again, as you start to transition to the residential areas, having what we call neighborhood commercial. Pictures to the right is actually the existing Bellefontaine family dentistry that's out there. That's a pretty good precedent for maybe a model development that the architecture is a little bit more kind of residential like, brick and asphalt shingle, pitch roofs, set back from the street a little bit with lawn in front. So in some ways it's a commercial development that has some residential architectural quality. So it's kind of a good transition, as you kind of go then to the surrounding residential areas. So this was a good kind of precedent development that's already there that could then be a model for adjacent development near it. And we also looked at in terms of, again, how to kind of maybe manage stormwater on the site and being an amenity, and not only being a functional but also an amenity for the development. Streetscape. As I mentioned, all the surrounding parcels are privately owned. There are a couple of vacant parcels that might be an opportunity to be priority development, but the downside of everything being privately owned, again, the patience in terms of either waiting for redevelopment to happen or finding someone to come in and maybe be kind of a proactive developer. But the streetscape is an opportunity really to invest, kind of public investment, now in terms of that, the public right of way is an opportunity to enhance this area in the shorter term. So we looked at some conceptual options in terms of what the streetscape might look like in terms of street trees, ornamental lighting, pedestrian improvements along the streetscape. And we talked about in the plan about moving forward, it actually needs to be a more detailed streetscape design done. But the plan kind of calls for some different options along the street and kind of the strengths and weaknesses of these different options. Bellefontaine Road is called out in the St. Louis County Action Plan for walking and biking to have future bike facilities. So we showed a couple of different options. An option here, an option B, and option C, how those bike facilities could be accommodated either with bike lanes kind of on the street or kind of a multi-use path adjacent. So again, there kind of needs to be some additional post this plan, some additional design work done to kind of make those final decisions in terms of working with county highways and also working with the community on those final design decisions. And same thing for pattern drive too. We proposed some ideas for pattern drive as part of the plan to be a guide, but again, there needs to be some final again as a later design to move the streetscape design forward. And I mentioned that tactile urbanism. And again, tactile urbanism is kind of a term to kind of describe short-term, sometimes temporary improvements. Again, and sometimes it's a chance to kind of maybe test things out for the long term. And there's in some ways there's some excess parking in this area, some underutilized green space. There's kind of some buildings with kind of some blank facades. So it sets up well in terms of maybe doing some of the tactile urbanism. So there's already precedent in terms of some of the restaurants there. You kind of see in the lower left corner of using the parking lot for special events. Angela and the CDC and her staff kind of coordinated with the businesses to have a fall fest. They kind of rolled out the plan to the community. This I think was end of October. So there is already kind of a precedent, in terms of using kind of excess parking for different things. And then the idea of, you can see some of the photos there on the bottom in terms of again kind of doing some temporary things with pavement painting to kind of give it just spruce up some of those areas. Murals and some of the buildings are potential. Again, there's some kind of really blank building facades in that area. Enhancing the bus stops, and then also again kind of as you think about kind of long-term improvements, if redevelopment perhaps isn't in the short term, working with the business owners in terms of facade and site improvements. So then we worked with the steering committee and the CDC to kind of roll out then what you saw, kind of what I just went through what we call the draft land use master plan. So we rolled this out to the community then at a community open house in September. The zoo was a gracious host of us at their new WildCare campus facility. Again, really positive feedback from the community of the draft master plan. And again, we asked in terms of, were we on the right track? You kind of see there on the bottom left, were we on the right track, with the master plan? And folks said, definitely, looks great. On the upper right, a little hard to see there in the photo, but we also asked in terms of getting the community's thoughts on priorities. And there was kind of a clear preference on priorities in terms of really focusing on, business retention and attraction in this area. Again, kind of going back to some of the things we talked about in our market analysis. And then finally, to kind of conclude then with implementation. So in terms of how to move the plan, forward, now in terms of in the future, and really kind of 5 kind of major components: zoning, streetscape infrastructure, what we kind of call development, acquisition and development, business retention and expansion, and then finally tactile urbanism. And I won't get into these in detail, but in the plan document, it kind of gets into this in the detail. This is kind of a summary in terms of looking at different phases moving forward in terms of really kind of 3 phases. Short term we call phase 1. Now is the next couple of years. Intermediate phase 2, 3 to 5 years, and then longer term phase 3, 6 to 10 years and beyond. And so one of the recommendations of the plan is implementation in terms of updating the zoning in this area, either with an overlay district potentially, or some updates to the actual kind of existing districts that are there. Again, that's something that could be done in the next, again, kind of in the shorter term. The streetscape investments in the streetscape, again, that's an opportunity to move forward in the shorter term. Again, there needs to be a kind of more detailed master plan and actual engineering design done in the shorter term, and maybe intermediate term construction, development. So in terms of the opportunity for redevelopment, there's some things that need to happen kind of in the shorter term. That would be kind of an ongoing process. There in the blue, it talks about the business retention and attraction. Again, in many ways, kind of an ongoing process. And the same kind of with tactile urbanism in terms of an ongoing process moving forward. And then also kind of in the final document, there's again kind of a really detailed set of action items. So each of those things I mentioned in terms of whether it's the streetscape, whether it's kind of the development, the final plan has a really detailed list of actions associated with each element. Who's kind of primarily responsible. So there's some things that Spanish Lake CDC would be responsible for. Things like the streetscape would really kind of come under the realm of the county's Department of Transportation, really kind of taking the lead on that. And then also kind of other partners that would be involved in that process. Like for the streetscape, obviously the CDC, Metro, because it has a couple of bus stops along the route. Ameren has utility lines along the route. So we've also listed as part of the action plan, some of those additional partners that would be associated with each action. So again, that kind of concludes again hopefully a fairly try to kind of get you through an overview fairly quickly. And again, like with any plan, any neighborhood community plan, it's really a guide for the future, not only a guide for action, but a guide in terms of as proposed development kind of is proposed in this area, using this plan to help guide that decision making on development in this area. So let me stop sharing. I'd be happy to take any questions or about the plan or about the process.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Anyone?
Mr. Ballard, you're muted.
Yes,
Okay.
I unmute myself. You guys seem to put a lot of work into this, and congratulations there, because that area can need some improvement. In your reimagination plan, does it include any of the existing businesses that are there? And what is their take, or is this just something that the community did exclusive of those guys?
That's a great question. No, and I forgot to mention that. So yeah, we did have conversations with existing business owners in that area, and Angela can touch on it too if she wants to jump in. But there's, I would say 80%, 9% of those business owners in the area are non-local. So our concentration was those folks who both kind of live and work and who own their businesses in that area. So we hosted kind of a small group meeting with those business owners with Angela and the CDC to kind of talk through the planning process. And I mentioned Bell Park Plaza, which is owned by developer now out of Miami. So we had a Zoom call with their local agent, and then Angela and her staff. They sent out letters to all the business owners in terms of kind of informing them of the process and inviting them to come to those larger meetings. So yeah, that's a great question in terms of we did want them involved in this process. Again, kind of with the understanding again in terms of like it's always a little bit of like a art and science in terms of when you talk to property owners about a longer term vision, right? Because because a lot of times they may have a great business and you want them to be part of that future vision. So how do you kind of get them to kind of like to understand how to kind of fit in? So it's not an always easy conversation, but I think the property owners that we talked to were I think especially the local ones, I think saw the need for improvements in the area, so they were excited about that, and they understand too in terms of it's a long-term process. I mean, no one kicking them off their property, right? It's a longer term process and vision for the area. So Angela, did you want to speak to that too? I think you're muted.
A quarter block down. Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. They also were excited because with development activity, there's an opportunity for them as well. If there are any type of incentives that are introduced, financial incentives that are introduced to businesses in that area. But I would say that it's fair to say that the businesses that we connected with were very excited about the development process.
Okay. You mentioned term disinvestment. Were they local or mostly external owners, people that didn't live in the city or in St. Louis area or Missouri?
Stephen, you may want the businesses that were outside of they were actually businesses out of town. The main owner, who owned majority of the parcels there, was that Bell Park Plaza owner, and that is that business is located in Miami.
Okay, so you're considering purchase some parcels yourselves, or trying to get someone to purchase some parcels that are available?
So, Commissioner Ballard, that really still remains to be seen. The next step, one of the next steps of this process is a development strategies plan, and that plan will talk about phasing. It will talk about actual sources and uses. It will talk about the the incentives that need to be had, that need to be garnered in order to do this project. So at that point, we will know, who or what would be the best course of action to do the acquisition and disposition of the property in the development area.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I would like to say one
Yep.
other quick thing. part of that Bellefontaine corridor study for this North Node area. So this North Node area, our development area we're talking about, and we're trying to change our language to now it's not just this area. We've named it the Spanish Lake Town Center. So this town center area has been more of a it seems to be more of an opportunity hub. So we want to make sure that this area is because there's retail down in the south area where I-270 and Bellefontaine is. So the retail and commercial is there. It's right off the highway, and because this Spanish Lake Town Center is a little bit more inside of the Spanish Lake area, that particular area, it's more, we're thinking that, and the study revealed that it would be more of a satellite center for service providers, for workforce development, for education, for health, and other types of services that will improve the economic mobility of the Spanish Lake residents. So that's why we're really very excited about that. We've also, if you don't mind, we have been moving toward implementing some of the recommendations with the plan. One, a small business association. We're hoping to get that started at the beginning of 2022, and then also bus stop improvements. We've garnered or we've have a partnership now with TrailNet and Metro, along with the Department of Transportation and then also the Planning Department, and just received word today that the CDC received a small grant to do bus stop improvements in their development area. So we're very excited and we're moving forward. We don't want this plan to be a shelf plan, and we want to just keep things moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
This is Lou Cunningham. I just want to say that this is very much needed, and with the help of Miss Pinex, kind of spearheading this thing, I think it is headed in the right direction. This is something that we've been looking forward to for a very long time, and I think we can all agree that it's very necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing no one, we thank you for the presentation and especially for the work that was put into the study. And Mel, do you have anything?
I'm not sure if we need to adjourn the committee meeting before we move to the executive meeting, but I don't have anything else for the committee meeting at this time.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and adjourn the committee of the whole and then reconvene in executive session. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And we're adjourned, and we will now go into executive session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay.
You're
Thank
very
you
welcome.
all so very much.
Okay, we'll now start the executive session. We'll go ahead and take roll call
Mr. Hilsinger,
here.
Mr. Ballard,
Here.
Mr. Cunningham,
Here.
Mr. Lawler, Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Okay, we have 6. We need a motion for the meeting minutes from the executive meeting of December 6th.
I so moved.
Second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. Status sheet will be prepared for the January 10th, 2022 meeting. Under committee reports, The only thing we have is what we just heard, the Spanish Lake Town Center Master Plan.
So we did prepare a correspondence item regarding the plan that's on the agenda under correspondence.
Okay, okay, that's the only item there. We'll go to old business, letters for approval.
So we have
PC
two, oh, I apologize.
Go ahead.
We have two letters tonight that are both consistent with your recommendations from the December 6th executive meeting. The first is PC 2921 on the north side of Manchester Road. The letter matches your recommendation for denial. And the other is for PC 3021 at Sulphur Spring and Arbor Spring Drive. This letter is consistent with the Commission's recommendation for approval, with the addition of a requirement for a site-proof fence along the western property line as approved on the site development plan.
Okay. We need a motion to approve the two letters.
Taylor, move for a approval.
We have
Second, Lou Cunningham, second.
discussion on either letter, anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. We'll go down to correspondence.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This correspondence is a recommendation of approval for the Spanish Lake Town Center Land Use Master Plan. As you heard during the presentation, the plan provides recommendations on land uses, streetscape improvements, and building design. Really, the adoption of the master plan as an amendment to the county's general plan would allow the planning department to use the recommendations in the master plan when reviewing zoning petitions. As you'll recall, you've probably seen references to other community plans in staff reports, as well as when reviewing site plans for development outside of a request for a change in zoning. So I would ask for a motion for approval at this time.
Do we have a motion from
I'll
anyone?
make a motion for approval.
I'll
I second.
second.
Discussion, anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it 6-0. And we have one site plan, PC 199-86, Intermark Assets Group.
So you can see from the county context map, this parcel is located in South County. You can see in the aerial the overall C8 development outlined in red. And then again from the aerial, just a closer view. The existing conditions are on the left. The proposed site plan shows the demolition of the building and here, and then sort of replaced with a slightly larger building, but still within the limits permitted in the C8 ordinance. Additionally, there are some parking lot improvements. This sort of blue circle represents where pervious pavement will replace non-pervious, and there's some additional ADA striping, ADA compliant parking spaces. The landscape plan they've proposed shows extensive landscaping interior to the site, fronting the building, as well as new landscaping within these parking lot islands that previously wasn't there. Perimeter landscaping largely remains the same. And then you have architectural elevations of the south elevation and the east elevation. The existing structure was occupied, was one tenant space. The proposal will be for 3 retail spaces within the building footprint. And then there's one more elevation, the north and the west elevation of the building. So at this time, I would ask for a motion for approval.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion for approval. Bill Ballard.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion, anyone?
Hey, Wayne, this is Keith. Is that where the penny, is that right? The old pennies, not the
Yes.
home goods? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. Anything for the good of the auditor? Mel?
Merry
Uh,
Christmas.
just a happy holiday to everyone, and we will have a January 10th executive meeting, likely comboed with a public hearing.
Okay, all right.
And I would say we have a lot of petitions that we will be discussing that
Yes.
evening at that executive meeting. It will be a very robust agenda that night.
Yeah,
so.
that's a good point, Jacob. So that one we may schedule earlier than 6 p.m., but we will let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, if you
Happy
could give us,
holidays.
yeah, you give us a little advance warning on what we're going to hear as far as
We're going to
documents.
try to send out a more robust packet.
Yeah,
going
we're
forward.
kind of, sometimes we're dealing in the dark here.
Sure.
So, okay. Appreciate that. All right. Happy holidays to everybody.
Same.
Happy holidays,
Al.
everybody.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Everybody
And we
have a
need a
good one.
motion to adjourn.
I'll make that
I
motion.
make the
Bill Mallard.
motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All those
I'll
in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. We'll see you next year.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Be safe.